So, hello and welcome everybody to another Sacred Wisdom podcast. In this podcast today, we are going to discuss ley lines. And some of you may have already seen that we did one on the Hidden History series on stone circles. And we want to elaborate more on that and talk more in depth about these ley lines, because I think this is a point we're at where we've really got to kind of remember this information. And I am joined again with my incredible brother, Stephen Denman, here today. So, hello, Steve. How are you, my friend?
Hello, Zach. I'm doing very well, and I hope all is good with you.
Super duper. Very good, my brother. And yeah, so first of all, we're going to just talk a little. We've already kind of gone into the detail on the hidden history. We'll talk a little bit about the ley lines and how these geomagnetic lines sort of intersect over this planet. And we have, we've had cities built on these ley lines, all sorts of different structures over
That's right.
years and
Yeah.
years. And obviously up to date, I think, economics as well. They build a lot of economic centers on these crossovers of ley lines and places, don't they, to
That's
reinforce
right.
that.
They do. They do indeed.
But Steve,
Yes.
give us a little history and your perspective on ley lines and what ley lines are.
Well, I perhaps take a slightly different approach to what geomagnetic ley lines are, their intersections, the vortices they create. I actually believe it isn't just about the kind of geomagnetic grid around planet Earth. I believe there is interconnections with these geomagnetic ley lines that go back to the time of the civilization that existed on the Lemurian continent, that existed in Atlantis, and obviously all the different colonies that survived the destruction of those civilizations and those two land masses. And I think that it really goes back to a kind of occult technology that was used during the antediluvian period. That's before the Great Flood on planet Earth. So we're going back to the Upper Paleolithic, and then if we move forward towards, into the modern age of almost like the rediscovery of geomagnetic ley lines and that what their functions are, we have that aspect of, so that sort of technical approach that we would see with Western science being taken. But then if you go back in time, I think for me, for what I can perceive, that there really was a trans-dimensional and interdimensional aspect to the geomagnetic ley lines. And so we're going back to the time of the Lemurian continent, the time of the islands of Atlantis.
Mm.
We can see that the occult technology that was interconnected with the ley lines was to do with frequency, vibration, and energetic resonances to open access points or dimensional portals into the 4D holographic reality, the astral plane. So there could be a level of communication, the development of a relationship with certain types of perhaps light beings or astral spirits for reasons to do with perhaps
Connection.
tutelage.
Yeah, connection
And
to the divine,
the
that's
connection to the divine consciousness of the universal creator, and also for healing purposes. What we look at today with allopathic medicine or Western medicine isn't really how things were approached when it came to the restoration of the biological form that we define as a Homo sapien or a human on planet Earth many thousands of years ago. And I
mm,
think geomagnetic ley lines were an essential aspect of that. And you touched on it in the intro to this Sacred Wisdom podcast when you mentioned about the certain buildings that were constructed in the past
mm.
on these ley lines. And that is one of the oldest, almost customary ways of actually approaching the usage of ley lines is to build on key points,
Of course.
essential areas where there's intersections to create specific types of frequency and vibration.
You'd use materials that would enhance that energy from the ley line. And
That's right.
it's a kind of quite obvious to
To
the people.
augment and optimize those frequencies and vibrations. So, if you bring it up to the point of maybe going 2,500 BC, maybe 2,400 BC or so, we take a look at the emergence of Irish Druidism and what became British Druidism, and we see the actual beliefs and the essential teachings that were placed on the use of geomagnetic ley lines in key areas of those landscapes, the Emerald Isle of Ireland and the
Yeah.
Sceptred Isle of Albion or Britain. And we see very clearly how the Druidic priests were almost obsessively focused on creating these dimensional access points or dimensional portals by using these geomagnetic ley lines. And
Mm.
this is one of the reasons they had these various stone circles, such as Stonehenge on Salisbury Plain, obviously the Avebury Circle,
Yeah.
because they were designed to create contours that could steer the frequencies, the vibrations, and energetic resonances of the geomagnetic ley lines, and this would create certain kinds of telluric electrical effects that
Yeah.
were known as earth lights that would then emerge. And so this obviously showed there was a build-up or an accumulation of telluric electricity,
Mm.
or you can say geomagnetic-based electricity building up with, just below the surface of the ground in these landscapes. That was very important to the Irish Druids and to the British Druids for reasons such as medicinal healing, also for prayer and meditation work, and as you said earlier, connecting to the divine consciousness of the universal creator. So our whole understanding in Western science, the indoctrination that really we've all been given,
Mm.
is so ingrained with this idea that these stone circles are irrelevant. Geomagnetic ley lines
Piles of
are
rock.
just classed as a form of quackery or pseudoscience that have no relevance. And
Yeah.
this is the imprinted kinds of culture creation and predictive programming we're giving with Western science. So we're supposed to ignore the importance and the sacredness of landscape worship,
Mm.
going back to the antediluvian period into the upper Paleolithic, and then onwards for the Irish Druids, the British Druids, and also the Gaulish Druids of France and Germany and other
Course.
areas of Northern Europe.
I mean, this grid was all over Europe and it actually spread
That's
right
right.
out. So this connected up, and you've got, St. Michael's Mound in Cornwall, and then that stretches across to France as well, which
That's
is the
right.
other lay point. I can't remember exact name, but there is
Yeah.
all these geomagnetics lined up. And obviously, that they rebuilt so much on top of it, and so many structures have gone on top and things have been knocked down. It's very hard to
Yeah,
locate.
there's a layering process has gone on over thousands of years,
Yeah.
and that in itself is quite a fantastical concept, that you could imagine a sort of a cutaway diagram of the landscape, and below there's these artifacts and remnants of various temples or buildings of worship
Mm.
buried, and there's layers and foundations of newer buildings on top coming right up to the surface in those areas. And I think when it comes to geomagnetic ley lines, we have to understand there is a vast and very intricate kind of interrelationship with the subjects of unidentified flying objects or
Of course.
UFOs, and then obviously ultra terrestrials, extraterrestrials, and obviously crop circles is another aspect to this as well. And a lot of those are actually seen to emerge in meadows and fields, I suppose really mainly in parts of Wiltshire, parts of Somerset, parts of Hampshire, you know, mainly in the southwest England kind of location, as well as the sort of near the south coast of England. We see the emergence of these crop circles with archetypal messages connected to mathematical symbolism,
Mm.
and also indications of various events that go back into the antediluvian period and the upper Paleolithic.
So do
So
you think
these geomagnetic ley lines are very, very important
so do
indeed.
you think the crop circles are almost like geometric symbols coming up from the ley line to give us messages?
I
Like
think I think there is a co-collaborative process going on, that yes, there is that aspect that there is perhaps encoded information in the 3D holographic reality of this material dimension that is stored within
Mm.
the resonances of these geomagnetic ley lines, and therefore within the geomorphic grid, if you like, of planet Earth or Mother Earth as a whole. And these are accessible through these geomagnetic ley lines, these vortices, and perhaps the Irish Druids and the British Druids and the Gaulish Druids, they fully understood this process.
Mm.
And we will never know the full truth of that, obviously, because they never really had any written documents. Their teachings were all oracular. That means they were only by word of mouth, over 20 years of training for the Druidic priests to accomplish that level of discernment and understanding.
But
But
all
I
those
believe there is an
records,
interrelationship, and I think a lot of what you were saying just a minute ago, I think, yeah, it can be drawn out by certain ultra terrestrials and extraterrestrials that know how to manipulate the geomagnetic ley lines to access that information that then can manifest through a UFO or spacecraft
Mm.
beamed down, because it's obviously accessing that frequency, that kind of that vibration, energetic resonance coming from those fields and meadows, and it's then seen, in within those fields and meadows as a message that needs to be deciphered by those that have the spiritual understanding,
Yeah.
who, in terms of their own development as soul personalities, have become very psychic, telepathic, have vast amounts of understanding of Western occultism and Eastern occultism, as well as different European mysticism, and
Yeah.
understand the importance of what these geomagnetic ley lines represent, and do perceive that interconnection and how to access that information, and that it's to do with the future development of Homo sapiens, or human beings, here on planet Earth. And we have to remember that humanity has been on planet Earth for thousands and thousands of years, and actually a lot longer than we are told by the conventionalities of Western science. And the same thing with geomagnetic ley lines, the interrelationship between Homo sapiens, or human beings, and the ley lines, the sacred landscape, the divine landscape, not just in the Emerald Isle of Ireland, the Scepter Isle of the United Kingdom of Great Britain,
Mm.
and as it was originally known as Albion or Britain, it goes richly globally. And
Yeah.
this really touches
And
on the idea that in the far distant past, going back before even the civilizations that existed on the Lemurian continent and on the Atlantean continent, you also had, obviously, in the Arctic North Polar region, you had the civilization of Hyperborea
of
that
course.
existed, and there again would have been a full and complete knowledge of the importance of geomagnetic ley lines and how to applicate them. And of course, we know about the shining pyramids and the crystal pyramids that have been found in
Yes.
certain locations in northern Russia.
Yeah.
So again, that's information to go into on another occasion. But we know that there was a worldwide, literally geomagnetic grid, and these various buildings were constructed on intersections of geomagnetic ley lines. So landscape worship was very prevalent. It's not just something that, Mongolian shaman or Peruvian shaman have been involved in for
No, it's
thousands
built
of.
into the earth. Yeah.
It does. It the earth energies
Mm.
and the actual, shall we say, the actual divine knowledge that was held by the Irish Druids, the British Druids, the Gaulish Druids, and in terms of world shamanism and touching on even world mythology and world folklore, geomagnetic ley lines have played a very important part in our understanding, and they
Mm.
are connected to elves and dwarves and gnomes and fairies, all these
Of course.
these these various life forms or creatures from world folklore,
You
and
only have to
even,
look,
yeah,
just say on that note, you look at the Royal Parks of London and
that's
how
right.
they are actually designed, especially a park like Hyde Park. And this is
Sacred geometry
designed on
based around the
all
ley
the
lines.
geomagnetics. You had the gardens that were built to electrify, enhance the kind of plant growth and implant all the well-being of the water and all these different things that happened in these little, yeah. That's what I'd say to any, even just looking at Google Maps, you can actually see how ley lines actually work in a way.
That's right.
You can
And you've
actually
just
work
touched
out the
on
grid.
another interesting aspect. If you're looking at the actual royal parks of London, whether it's Hyde Park, Regent's Park, and
Mm,
so forth, when you look at the actual sacred geometry that is used with the various lakes, the even the public footpaths,
of course.
the plant schemes of various non-flowering and flowering plants, then upwards from there to shrubs and trees, you can see there's no accident. It's not random the way everything has been placed where it is. And you touched on the aspect of the flowing of water. So
Yeah,
this
of
creates a piezoelectric effect. So we
course.
know that where there's many geomagnetic ley lines, such across Salisbury Plain,
Yeah,
and going from Wiltshire into Somerset, and then you can go from Somerset perhaps into Herefordshire, and then that general area across southwest England is known to have very large amounts of subterranean, streams or waterways, and
Mm.
these run in parallel underneath or in alignment with Pacific geomagnetic ley lines that crisscross the landscape of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. And
Sure.
so we know there is an interrelationship between the piezoelectric current of these subterranean waterways or streams and the actual frequencies, vibrations, and the resonances or energetic resonances of these geomagnetic ley lines that literally resonate or it sort of invisibly reverberate
Yeah, yeah.
on the landscape of the United Kingdom of Great Britain.
It's a
So
whole vibrational state from the
that's
water that's
right.
created and actually getting moving some way actually up into the earth, And
Mhm.
obviously, if that's suppressed and controlled, and not seen or people aren't aware to it, who knows what's kind of happening in their waterways and what is actually being, how people are manipulating that as well. Because obviously, if you look at London and the certain locations of London where ley lines are, Canary Wharf, all around that area, the Isle of Dogs, Greenwich, all that kind of area, masses of ley lines. And there is obviously the main financial centers there. This is where they put all the money and the finance. A lot of finance runs through there. Again, like money, the water. It's the same process. And
That's
this
it.
is
There's an
it's obviously
interconnection.
again
Yeah.
connects to the inversion, of these ley lines and what they actually were originally used for.
Well, money is currency, so there's the
Of
current.
course.
So riverbank, water flowing, you have banks. So
Yeah,
there's
of course.
obviously these linguistic connotations and
Yeah.
interlinkages there. And when you look at people like William Stukeley, you look at people
Yeah.
like Alfred Watkins, and many other individuals going back into the Georgian period, going into the Victorian age. It almost became a kind of parochial obsession to focus on the actual sacred landscape, the landscape worship
Mm.
that started to develop was so fascinating, and the idea of using cartographic mapping, going out and using geodesy, which is basically measuring the three-dimensional holographic reality of the material dimension by using specific monuments, specific geomagnetic alignments
Mm.
on the landscapes, not just here in the United Kingdom of Great Britain, but obviously around planet Earth.
Yeah.
And they were discovering mathematically some very seemingly unusual coincidences, but they weren't, because obviously these places have been mapped out with various kinds of occult technology in the distant past. And my personal belief that goes way back into the antediluvian period and the Upper Paleolithic.
And just give a time period for that dates
Well,
roughly in
so
sense.
we would be looking at a period in my estimation going back at least 12,500 BC to maybe 13,500 BC.
Yeah,
So a
that makes
long time
sense.
into the past. So
Well, I think
uh,
it's probably already. I actually think it's probably been inherent on this earth for years. I think
it
probably ever
has
since
been,
the
yeah,
birth of the earth, however the earth was started,
yeah,
however it began. But this was integral to us. This is when we came
yeah,
here. This is what it was. This was the way the planet was. I think we won't go into that now, but there was a sense of a hijacking of the planet in some way, and that's probably some other force that is on a whole other level of existence that we don't really know or understand just yet. But this is definitely something we all have to remember about ley lines. And there was a period of time, I think 17th, 18th century, well, early 17th century, where they started coming up to light and up to speed. It started coming back to life, and then it was suppressed again. And then
yeah.
you had others like Alfred Watkins bring it up, then it was suppressed again.
That's
And it's
right.
constantly happened. So obviously there is a force to get a force against that, and doesn't want this information or knowledge to be resurfaced,
It's interesting that incredible discoveries that were made by people like Nikola Tesla and Victor Schauberger,
of
and how
course.
they were then shut down. They were suppressed. They were sidelined. So the same sort of modus operandi or
Mm,
MO was used again. It's either with individuals this occurs, or it's the knowledge that is kind of generically arising that a number of individuals are getting access to and going, wow, and
yeah.
disseminating with other like-minded researchers. That then seems to become a bit of a problem. And for certain individuals or policymakers, and that's we leave it at that. So that in itself is something that I think is going to really positively change after 2034, 2035 with the emergence and beginning of this new golden age.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see if we know that there's this massive surge of cosmic radiation that's exponentially moving at ever increasing rates from the center of the Milky Way galaxy into this solar system. We know that it's currently affecting the gravitational fields at a very intense level, from Jupiter to Saturn, Uranus to Neptune, causing massive electrical storms. We know it's starting to seriously affect, in many ways, the heliopause and the heliosphere, and the ultimately the magnetic field around our sun, which is a yellow dwarf star. That in a turn then affects the
Your ley
magnetic
lines.
field around planet Earth,
Of course.
and that in turn, obviously, the jet streams. But then there's going to be an effect also on the geomagnetic ley lines that create the morphogenic field, if you like, or the geomagnetic field around planet Earth.
Mm,
And I think we're going to see a really positive shift in human consciousness.
mm.
And it will only begin in 2034, 2035, and it will build traction from that time onwards. And we're going to see this new golden age or this golden period start to slowly, progressively emerge.
Mm.
And I think there will be a rediscovery of the importance of the ley lines and what they represent, their healing potential, and that in terms of energy extraction,
It's
when
gonna.
you take a look at the usage of the ether or the telluric electricity,
Mm,
the same sort of process can occur with this ground-based telluric electricity that has built up in
mm.
the geological substrata that's built up in the piezoelectric flow or currents in these subterranean waterways that seem to run parallel to many of the geomagnetic ley lines that are known to exist under Salisbury Plain, where Stonehenge is, for it, as an
I mean, a
example.
lot of people, yeah, we're 70-80% water, our bodies, and we
Yeah,
are a water planet ultimately.
yeah,
Obviously 2/3 of the planet is underwater. So,
yeah,
it's driven that and that is going to be affected in a huge way. Water, it's got information in there, so knowledge. So this is what's going to be interesting about when that solar radiation and all that's happening is how it's going to, I believe it's going to upgrade our
yeah.
consciousness. There's going to be information in that light that will almost like combine with this water or this energy and bring it up. I don't want to go too much into the whole space aspect because I think there's
Yeah,
enough about the ley lines on planet Earth, but ley lines do stretch out into other galaxies and right out into the
yeah.
universe as well. But in this planet, we've got like a whole geometric grid, and this is what's interesting. Obviously, America as well, because America's not really discussed on this level about the geomagnetics, but obviously you've got huge structures. Statue of Liberty, I would believe, would have been built on a ley line, and probably Washington, White House, all these different buildings.
We have a starfall where the Statue of Liberty is. There's a starfall
Of
around
course,
its base. So, but then you also look at the Bosnian pyramids that are in the Visoko Valley
of
in
course.
Bosnia, in
Mm,
southeastern Europe, and we know that there are subterranean waterways that have actually been discovered
yeah.
there. And these run underneath Pacific conduits or Pacific directions below the solar pyramid or the pyramid of the sun and the lunar pyramid or the pyramid of the moon
Yeah.
in the Visoko Valley of Bosnia. So what they found was there are certain types of oblong and therefore rectangular shaped stone blocks that were constructed over these subterranean waterways.
Mm,
And they were designed so the movement of the water would create friction
yeah.
with these specific types of subterranean, geometrically shaped rocks or stones, and that would help to enhance the piezoelectric effect. It also, within the molecular structure of the stone itself,
Mm,
created an electrical ambience. And they found that actually inside the solar pyramid or the pyramid of the sun and the lunar pyramid or the pyramid of the moon in Visoko Valley in Bosnia, that these are actually subterranean divine temples of medicinal healing. So
yeah.
they create an electrostatic subterranean ambience where you can go into deep sleep or meditation there and literally can restore the genetics and therefore the RNA, the DNA, and therefore the cells of the human body to
Mm.
optimize the health of those human beings that enter those incredible, shall we say, really pyramid temples. in
Yeah.
that area of Bosnia. So
Well,
that's a very direct and apparent usage of those geomagnetic ley lines, and that kind of resonant connection that occurs with these subterranean waterways.
and I think the pyramids are a real giveaway to these ley lines in the sense of the way they were designed. And that's always another reason as well why there's so much suppression around out all the pyramids. There are these pyramids are all over the world, and they once structured it all over in different countries, I believe.
Yeah.
I think even in Australia, well, that would have been part of the old Lemurian continent, wouldn't it?
There was an Australian polymath. That means he was an expert in many different sort of learned subjects, and his
Yeah,
name was Reginald Gilroy, but he was known by his kind of pen name is Rex Gilroy.
right,
He wrote a book called Pyramids in the Pacific,
right,
and that was about the remains of various Lemurian pyramids that he had discovered in Queensland in Western Australia.
right. Okay,
And
wow.
so very fascinating. And he did extensive field work for many years into those Lemurian pyramids in the Queensland sort of district or Queensland region of Western Australia, and found that what had originally been the case with the topography in Western Australia was there were huge estuarine and river courses that had gone through there many thousands of years ago. But obviously, with earthquake and tectonic activity, the
Yeah.
landmass had risen in Western Australia, and obviously the salt water had drained away.
Mm,
But these would have been Lemurian pyramids built near a coastal location in that part of Western Australia,
mm.
again creating that piezoelectric effect. And certain geomagnetic ley lines would interconnect where they were obviously, or intersections where they had been constructed.
And sometimes when I look at the hills in Scotland, I mean, I don't know for sure, but you can look at these hills and some of them look so pyramid-like.
Yeah, they
And
found the
you
same
think,
thing in parts of Ireland as well. There's a
hmm,
whole are they actual, are they Scottish pyramids that have been buried under thousands of tons of silt, gravel, and soil?
yeah,
So we also know in Ireland that there's many people who are now questioning some of these seemingly hillside natural formations and saying, they look like Irish pyramids or Celtic pyramids that are buried under possibly thousands of tons of silt and gravel and soil. But
yeah,
the question you have to ask is why. This is the same thing, by the way, with the Bosnian pyramid, the solar pyramids,
mm,
and the lunar pyramid, and there's many other Bosnian pyramids around the Vasoko Valley,
yeah,
and they seem to have all been buried under thousands of tons of soil and gravel, and then even trees and shrubs have been planted on them.
yeah.
But then when they actually do ground penetrating radar, they actually discover there's actually specific geometric shapes underneath all this seemingly natural landscape formated, sorry, under these seemingly natural landscapes.
But yeah, it's particularly America though, and I look at the American landscape that has been particularly destroyed in the sense of
Yeah,
these ley lines. It's been completely inverted.
that's right.
There is still life, a lot of life in Great Britain. There are so many
Oh,
circles left over.
incredible history here in
And
the
this
United
is what
Kingdom. Yeah,
people, realize that, you can activate stuff inside these stone circles and the energy is still there if you wish it to be. It's a matter of your observation that is really important and your, acknowledgement of this, of that energy around you for it to actually work. It's not going to work any other way. It doesn't just come on when you walk in there. It's not going to work like that, but you've got to have an understanding of this energy. But Steve, yeah, I mean, there's so much we could say, and we are going to go into a lot more details on all this because there's so much we could cover. And I think we should do a whole episode like we've done on the pyramids. We have to do that as well and go into detail on that because
yeah,
that's absolutely fascinating. But we are going to discuss it more. But we have actually got our second book released, and this is Luminous Worlds. And Stephen has done an absolute fantastic job of research. I've really brilliant, and we've both done a lot of work on it. But Stephen particularly has really researched this. So it's a little encyclopedia almost of information of fantastical information, and that's available on Amazon now in paperback and ebook, and you can also purchase that through my website. But Steve-O, thank you so much. It's amazing. And
That's all right. Absolutely. It's been a really, really good Sacred Wisdom podcast. I think the whole subject of geomagnetic ley lines is going to become increasingly important over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years or so. And we're definitely going to enter a golden age or a golden period after 2034, 2035. Let's keep positive. Let's keep focused. And let's keep making sure we're maintaining and promoting the importance and usage of this kind of knowledge.
yes, natural energy. We've got to bring
That's
that back
right.
to life, and it's important we all kind of understand it. But
That's it.
Steve, that's been amazing. And really, yeah, this energy is coming back. We are going to resurge and remember this energy and remember what this planet truly was. And this is what we have to do, and we have to learn and educate ourselves. It's the only way we can do this. There's no way we could just look out there and point fingers and say they can't be doing that. It's about us understanding this reality.
That's
And
right.
it's a bye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.